Imagine a solitary man just, sitting alone in his study. He's read every book. He's elevated his thoughts to these absolute highest philosophical peaks, and he's essentially mapped out the entire universe in his mind.
Right.
And yet, what does he actually crave? He walks out of that study, he finds a dog, and he just waits for it to recognize his voice. He seeks out the messy physical earth.
He really does.
Yeah, and today we're diving into a whole stack of philosophical and historical sources to figure out why all those grand theories in the world, no matter how good they are, they just won't save you when life actually hits you in the face.
Absolutely.
So, if you are constantly navigating this modern world of total information overload and you're feeling that massive gap between the values you hold in your head and, well, the actions you actually take, today is for you.
It's such a common feeling, too.
It is. Our mission in this deep dive is to essentially take a masterclass in bridging that gap. We are translating all this abstract philosophy into a daily workable technology for living.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that image I just mentioned, the solitary man, that actually comes from someone specific, right?
Yeah, so what's fascinating here is that specific image comes from an observation by F.J.J. Boydendijk.
Was it Dyke?
Exactly. He was looking deeply into human psychology, like our fundamental nature. And he pointed out that humans are inherently split creatures.
Split how? Like mind and body?
Basically, yeah. We are part spirit, the soaring intellect, but we are also part earth, part animal. We have this really profound yearning to be embedded in the physical reality around us.
We want to touch things.
Yeah.
Really recognized.
Right. But for a long time, philosophical ambition has kind of tried to cure us of that earthly part. Like, we try to intellectualize our way out of our basic human messiness.
Oh, totally. Just think your way out of a problem. Yes, but Dyke shows that yearning for connection, that need for the dog to hear your voice, it isn't a weakness we need to transcend. It's actually the very foundation of wisdom.
Wow.
Yeah, if you try to strip away the physical, earthly part of yourself just to become pure spirit, you lose your footing entirely. The split cannot be solved by thinking. It just has to be lived.
It has to be lived, which perfectly sets up the core metaphor of our deep dive today. Because we live in this physical, earthly world, we cannot just theorize our way through hardship. The document we're pulling heavily from today is actually titled, May 21st, The Ring is the Only Classroom.
Such a great title.
It really is. And to put it as bluntly as the source material does, you cannot think your way through a punch.
You really can't. And that is the exact mindset the great Stoic thinkers used when they were approaching philosophy.
They weren't just guys in togas stroking their beards.
Not at all. They didn't view philosophy as some escape hatch from earthly life or, a quiet room you retreat to when the world gets too loud. For them, it was a practical, gritty technology for surviving the actual blows of life.
And when we talk about surviving those blows, we have to look at Epictetus. Just for context, Epictetus was a former slave. He knew visceral, real, physical suffering.
Yeah, his life was not easy.
Exactly. So philosophy was not some fun intellectual exercise for him. It was a literal survival mechanism. And he poses this incredibly blunt challenge to his students, basically asking what kind of boxer exits the ring just because he took a few punches.
Which is such a striking question. And, to really get it, we have to understand the cultural weight of that boxing metaphor for the Stoics.
Right. Because it meant something specific to them.
Yeah, they live in an era where pankration was huge.
Right, the ancient mixed martial arts, right?
Basically ancient MMA, yeah, but with almost zero rules. It was a central fixture of society. And the men fighting in that ring, they weren't seen as just brutes or entertainers like we might think of fighters sometimes today. The fighter was considered a moral exemplar.
Wait, really? A moral exemplar? Just for fighting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the discipline to stay in the ring when your body is literally being broken, that was seen as the ultimate display of character.
Oh, I see.
So when Epictetus asks what kind of person leaves when the going gets hard, the implied answer is a total indictment. It means you were never really in the fight to begin with. You were just playing at being a philosopher.
Just putting on the gloves for a photo op.
Exactly. And Seneca takes us a step further, adding these crucial elements of time and physical endurance. He argued that unbruised prosperity is weak.
Unbruised prosperity. That's a great phrase.
It really hits hard. If you have never been hit, if you've lived this completely sheltered life, you are incredibly fragile. He advocated for developing a callous skin from a constant feud with misfortunes.
Okay, let's think about it like this. This is how I pictured it when reading the sources. Imagine you have this massive philosophical ambition to become a master swimmer.
Okay.
You sit on the beach and you read a towering stack of books on the physics of buoyancy, the mechanics of the freestyle stroke, the history of oceanic currents. You feel completely prepared.
You get all the theory.
Exactly. And then someone just throws you into the deep end of the freezing ocean. All that intellectual theory does absolutely nothing to keep you afloat.
Nothing at all.
The shock of the cold water, the thrashing around, the swallowing of seawater, the slow building of muscle, the actual doing of it is what keeps you alive.
I love that analogy because that thrashing in the water is a perfect parallel for Boyendike's Earthbound Man that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Developing those emotional and psychological calluses is widely misunderstood today. I mean, people hear stoicism and they think it means becoming this unfeeling, armored machine.
Just totally numb to everything.
Right, but it does not mean you stop feeling the freezing water. It means you have built the psychological muscle memory to remain swimming while feeling the freezing water. You feel the pain, the grief, the frustration, but you refuse to let it drown you.
That is such a vital distinction. But, surviving those external waves, the punches from the outside, that's really only half the battle.
Oh, definitely.
Because the opponent in the ring, or the freezing water, is highly visible. But what happens when the opponent is in your own head? What happens when the punches are self-inflicted?
Ah, yeah. That brings in author Ryan Holiday's concept of the other boxer who leaves the ring.
The other boxer.
Right. We all know the fighter who gets physically knocked out.
Huh.
But there's a second type of fighter who defeats himself before the opponent even lands a single blow.
And how does he do that?
This fighter quits through perfectionism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we set these impossibly high, abstract standards for our own behavior. And inevitably, because we are human and messy, we fall short of those standards.
Of course.
And then, in the psychological agony of that shortfall, we just abandon the fight entirely. We leave the ring because, well, if we cannot execute the technique perfectly, we refuse to execute it at all.
We just take our ball and go home.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius actually dealt with this constantly. If you read his private notes, his meditations, he essentially has to remind himself over and over that success isn't about perfectly dodging every hit.
Right.
Success is a measure of how quickly you pick yourself up after being jarred by your own emotional reactions or external circumstances.
It's all about the recovery time. And, John Steinbeck touched on this exact mechanism 17 centuries later in his novel East of Eden.
I love this connection.
It's so good. There is this pivotal scene where the servant, Lee, is speaking to Adam Trask. And Adam is this man who is completely paralyzed by guilt because he consistently fails to be the flawless, pure person he imagines he ought to be.
His perfectionism has made him totally stagnant.
Exactly. He's stuck. And Lee looks at him and delivers this incredibly liberating line. He says, "Now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good."
Such a powerful quote.
It is, but wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. I hear that, but honestly, it sounds a little bit like a permission slip for mediocrity. Like if I tell myself I don't need to aim for perfection, doesn't that just open the door to laziness? Like, hey, I'm only human, so a half-hearted effort is fine.
I get why it sounds that way, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that Steinbeck is absolutely not offering an excuse for laziness.
Okay.
What he's doing is forcing a reorientation of the fight itself. Perfect is an abstraction.
Yeah.
It's a ghost. It does not exist in the physical, messy world we established earlier.
Yeah. The earthly realm.
Exactly. Good, however, is a tangible reality. Good is showing up, making mistakes, apologizing, and trying again. When you demand perfection, the inevitable failure breeds this deeply toxic self-criticism.
It turns inward.
Yes, and Tim Ferriss captures the psychological danger of this perfectly. He notes that a vessel holding acid is damaged far more than anything it eventually pours that acid upon.
That is a terrifying way to look at self-criticism. A vessel holding acid, but it makes total sense.
The psychology behind it is devastating. If you are constantly stewing in the acid of your own perfectionism, like berating yourself for every misstep, analyzing every flaw, you are destroying the vessel.
You're eating away at yourself.
You are eroding your own capacity to act. The Stoic fighter has to resist two distinct temptations. The urge to quit when the world hits you, and the urge to corrode from the inside out when you hit yourself.
Man, that's heavy. So if we agree to stay in the ring, and we agree to stop demanding absolute perfection and just aim for being good, how do we honestly measure if we are actually achieving that?
That's the real challenge.
Right. Because we have to move away from our internal feelings. Our internal monologues are just notoriously unreliable. They tell us exactly what we want to hear. We need external evidence. And the ultimate unflinching audit of your life is your calendar.
Oh, the calendar.
Mm.
This is where Marcus Aurelius serves as the profound cautionary tale, which is really striking since he's usually held up as the ultimate Stoic hero.
Yeah, he's the poster boy for this stuff.
Right. But by all historical accounts, Marcus Aurelius deeply, genuinely loved his wife Faustina. They were married for 30 years. And when she died, his grief was overwhelming. He even built temples to deify her.
Wow.
Yeah. In letters to his tutor, he expressed that he would rather live in exile on a desolate island with Faustina than rule the entire Roman Empire without her.
So his internal intention and his emotional reality were rooted entirely in his love for her.
Absolutely. His internal narrative was entirely romantic and devoted, but then you audit his calendar. Yeah. The physical reality of his life consisted of years spent away at war on the freezing frontiers. He endured extended stays in Greece. The machinery of the empire just swallowed his time completely.
To be fair, he didn't really ask to be emperor.
True, he didn't ask for it, but the role dictated his schedule. And despite his private internal longings, his calendar physically placed him away from the woman he loved, while the years of his life just ticked away.
The calendar is utterly indifferent to our romantic intentions.
It really is. It simply records the physical location of our bodies over time.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how this applies to us right now, today. To me, the calendar is exactly like the screen time report on a modern smartphone.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right. You can sit there and construct an entire internal identity. You tell yourself, I deeply value reading classic literature. I prioritize my mental health. I am a thoughtful, engaged citizen. You feel like that person.
You really believe it.
But if your screen time report says you spent 4 hours on a Tuesday doom scrolling through social media out of pure anxiety, well, the report is telling the truth. Your internal feelings are lying to you.
That modern equivalent is spot on. The ancient playwright Menander actually issued a provocation that cuts right to the heart of this. We're all familiar with the famous Delphic maxim, know thyself.
Yeah.
Menander argued that know thyself is actually a trap. He said it is much better to know other people.
Really? How so?
Well, engaging in a perpetual interior audit, endlessly examining your own feelings, your own pure intentions, your own complex identity, it's just sophisticated navel-gazing. It keeps you outside the ring.
You're just sitting in the locker room thinking about the fight.
Exactly. Truly knowing the people you love means understanding their actual physical experience of your presence or your absence. You cannot claim to value a relationship and remain perfectly comfortable with a calendar that constantly places you somewhere else.
Bruce Lee summarized the sheer necessity of this external action. He said, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. There is just zero middle ground there.
Not at all.
And Peter Drucker, the legendary management consultant, he translated this ancient wisdom into the organizational world. He argued that if a company's philosophy does not translate into actual policy meaning, like tangible targets, specific rewards, measurable actions, then that philosophy is just furniture.
Furniture, I love that.
Right. It just sits in the lobby looking nice, but it does absolutely zero work.
Because action is the only metric the earthly realm recognizes.
Okay, so if the calendar proves we need concrete action rather than just good intentions, how do we figure out what right actions to actually schedule?
That's the next logical step.
Because the natural assumption is that we need to figure out what goodness is first and then go do it. But Leo Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom flips this completely. He quotes the sociologist Harriet Martineau, who makes this really radical claim.
What did she say?
She said, nobody has any idea about what goodness is until they start doing it.
Man, it is an epistemic shock to how we normally operate.
It really is.
We treat goodness or morality like a geometry problem. We think we can sit alone in a quiet room, puzzle over the variables, map out the perfect ethical action in our heads, and then simply walk out and execute it.
Just follow the blueprint.
Right, but Martineau's pointing out that human interaction doesn't work that way. Goodness is disclosed entirely in the practice of it. You literally do not possess the knowledge of what it means to be good until your hands are engaged in the work.
John Ruskin adds a really interesting layer to this. He advises that we should dedicate our day to the good of others, but we must do it without talking about it.
Because the act of talking, the act of debating the philosophy of it, is just another way of staying outside the ring.
Exactly. It is choosing to be the theorist rather than the boxer.
And, the Talmud provides an incredibly warm dimension to this strict focus on action. It instructs that giving charity to the poor receives a double blessing if the physical act is met with tenderness and a genuine goodbye.
Oh, wow. Which connects perfectly back to Beidendeck's animal from the very beginning of our deep dive.
Precisely. The genuine contact, the tenderness, the animal responding to the tone of your voice. That earthly physical connection is what transforms a cold transactional transfer of resources into a genuine human relationship.
It's not just moving money from point A to point B.
No, you cannot plan warmth in advance on a spreadsheet. You cannot theorize tenderness. It only arises spontaneously in the physical execution of the act.
Maya Angelou wraps up this distinction between the abstract and the concrete so beautifully. She wrote, "The desire to reach for the stars is ambitious. The desire to reach hearts is wise."
That's gorgeous.
So, what does this all mean? It means your lofty, abstract goals. The stars, your legacy, your grand vision for humanity. Those are fine to have. But they must ultimately land concretely on the specific, flawed, complicated person standing right in front of you today. That is the heart.
But moving from the abstract star to the concrete heart requires immediate urgency. And this is the final and perhaps the highest hurdle.
Urgency.
Yeah, because it is incredibly easy to listen to Epictetus, to agree with Maya Angelou, and to think, this is profound. I am definitely going to apply this next week when work slows down.
Oh, absolutely. I will become a fully realized Stoic on Monday morning.
We all do it. So how do we force this philosophical ambition into the present tense?
Right. How do we make it happen now?
Well, the ancient Stoics relied on the practice of memento mori, remembering that you must die, keeping the reality of your own death at the forefront of your mind.
Which sounds kind of grim.
It does, and it's often misinterpreted as morbidity. But Marcus Aurelius used this daily to shatter his own procrastination. It is actually a clarifying lens.
Clarifying how?
When you hold your inevitable mortality in your mind, the scale of your daily frustrations completely shifts. Suddenly, being stuck in a massive traffic jam doesn't seem like the end of the world.
That's true.
Would you genuinely prefer the temporary annoyance of the traffic jam or the permanent silence of the grave? Would you prefer reading a troll's unhinged insults on the internet or being dead?
It aggressively reframes your baseline for gratitude. You're suddenly like, hey, I am alive to experience this annoyance. How lucky am I?
Exactly.
There is also this fascinating advice from writer Rich Cohen's father. He used to say, the key to success is to care, but not that much.
Care, but not that much.
Right. He advised viewing your daily struggles as a mere blip on the radar screen of eternity.
But honestly, how are we supposed to balance those two extremes?
What do you mean?
Well, how do you care deeply about the present moment, actively reaching for Maya Angelou's hearts, while simultaneously telling yourself that your entire life is just a meaningless blip on eternity's radar? Like, aren't those totally opposite ideas? This raises an important question, and it brings us to a concept known as double compression.
Double compression.
Yeah. These two perspectives, the intense urgency of your mortality and the vast insignificance of eternity, they're not actually contradictory. Think of them as two hands pressing together from opposite sides, creating massive pressure.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The first pressure is mortality. This moment is literally all you possess. You could leave life tomorrow, so do not waste today. The second pressure is eternity. Your personal anxieties, your embarrassments, your ego, they are cosmically microscopic, so do not let them paralyze you.
Wow.
What survives that intense double compression? Only the pure, unburdened action of what simply needs doing right now.
It essentially crushes the ego and the procrastination at the exact same time, leaving only the required action.
Perfectly said. But executing that requires incredibly clear vision. Pema Chodron actually warns against anything that clouds that vision, particularly anger.
Because anger messes with your perception.
Completely. She notes, without anger, there is no enemy. Anger is a distortion. If you step into the ring furious, you multiply your opponents in your own mind and exhaust your energy before the real work even begins.
We actually see a beautiful lived verification of this emotional discipline in Jessica Bruder's journalism, particularly in her book Nomadland.
Oh yes, the nomads.
Right. She spent time with nomadic Americans living in RVs on the extreme economic margins of society. These are people taking brutal, heavy punches from life. They are fundamentally in the ring
Every single day.
every day. But Bruder observed a fascinating psychological resilience. They struggle deeply, yet they remain remarkably upbeat simultaneously. They have not allowed the adversity to make them cruel.
They haven't let the acid of bitterness destroy the vessel.
Exactly. That cheerfulness in the face of absolute uncertainty is a profound form of wisdom. You simply cannot get that from reading a book in a safe room.
You really can't. They are embodying what modern thinker Chip Conley calls being a mentern.
A mentern,
Yeah.
like mentor and intern.
Exactly. Acting as both a mentor and an intern simultaneously. Maintaining the humility to stay endlessly curious, like an intern, while holding on to the hard-won wisdom of your experiences, like a mentor.
That is a fantastic concept. So if we pull all this together to bring straight to your daily reality, the chorus of voices we've explored today demands essentially one thing from you. Do something today.
Not perfectly.
Not perfectly at all. You do not need to resolve all of your internal contradictions before you act. Just do something for someone with your absolute full attention. The ladder of your highest philosophical aspirations must have its feet planted firmly in the mud of the earth.
I love that image. And, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on the mechanics of everything we've uncovered today.
Yeah, please.
If, as Harry Martineau pointed out, we only truly discover what goodness is by physically doing it, and if our calendar is the ultimate unflinching record of our physical reality,
The screen time report.
right, then how many brilliant, compassionate, profoundly good versions of ourselves have we permanently lost simply because we stayed safely in the planning phase?
Oh, man.
Tomorrow's blank calendar isn't just a mundane schedule of meetings and errands. It is a literal list of discoveries about your own character that you either will or will not make.
That is a deeply powerful thought to carry with you. Remember the solitary man from the beginning. You are a creature of the earth. You need the warmth of the real world, and the world desperately needs your concrete actions, not just your good intentions. The ring is the only classroom. The day is the only day. You can leave life right now, so don't.